everybody. Welcome to Amazing You podcast and YouTube channels, the channels where stories of resilience, triumph, and unwavering hope come to life. And in each episode, we dive into the inspiring journey of individuals who have faced the toughest challenges heads on and emerge victorious. Our aim is to be a beacon of inspiration, offering a guiding light to those facing some difficult times. And whether you are dealing with health challenges, professional setbacks, or personal struggles, this channel is dedicated to uplifting your spirit and showing you that even in the darkest moments, there is a path to hope and triumph. So join us, everybody, as we share powerful stories that transcend adversity, reminding you that resilience is a force within us all. So be prepared to be inspired and to find the strength to navigate life's challenges. And I would like to say a huge thank you to the audience for watching, sharing, and subscribing. To those who've supported the channels for the past 3 years, huge thank you to you. And to anybody who is new, very warm welcome. And please share to as many people as you can, because it's about the more people that we get the message, the more people get helped. So I am your host today. My name is Dr. Rani Thanacoody. I am a clinical hypnotherapist using rapid transformational therapy method. I am a past life regression practitioner, breathwork coach, tarot reader, astrologer, life force compassion practitioner, and chakra practitioner. And today I have the immense pleasure to introduce you to a wonderful lady. Her name is Anastasia Sheldon. She's the owner and manager of a regenerative farm, and she's also an intuitive reader. And Anastasia runs also a retreat center in Taos, New Mexico. So very warm welcome to Amazing You, Anastasia.
Rani, thank you so much for having me on the show, and it's been lovely to get to know you these last few weeks. I'm so delighted to meet your audience and to participate today, and I feel very honored that you reached out and that we're connecting.
Thank you so much, Anastasia, for your kind words and for taking the time. I know how busy it is. Must be for you to run a farm. There's a lot of things, for giving us your time to talk to the audience. And I am as well very, very honored to be able to host you on this channel. So huge thank you, deep gratitude to you.
Thank you.
And my first question to you, Anastasia, because we've talked a few weeks ago, and you told me some really interesting thing about yourself and that you never owned a farm before. You were doing something very different in real estate. So I would like you to share your journey, to tell us briefly about your story.
Thanks. Yeah. So 17 years ago, actually now it's more like 23, I started a real estate career. I was married. I had 2 little children. And at that point, I had already spent quite a few years in the world of somatics, and I was a Feldenkrais practitioner, and I delved into the world of real estate because I hadn't had much success economically in some of the somatics at that point. And so I was hopeful that maybe if I went into real estate, I would come up with the funds to do something that had always been my fantasy, which was to have a little farm that we could sell shares in and have all of my young friends and family at that point in the aughts, it was 2004, buy shares into it, and we could have our own little farm that we could go to on the weekends. And as life would have it, I got into real estate thinking this would help me both financially and also teach me about contracts and whatnot, having been in the world of the body and the physics of movement for so many years. And what took off was the real estate, and what went to the back burner was the fantasy of the farm. And so many years went by, and I learned how to build a successful business. And my kids became teenagers, and then they went to college. And then sometime around 2021, actually it was 2020, it was April of 2020, we'd been sent home from COVID. And at that point, realtors hadn't yet been told that they were essential workers, which they eventually were. And I was sitting on my yoga mat, and I just heard and felt deeply inside me, now. And I sensed what was required. I didn't know what that meant exactly. I lived in California. I was married. I was living in a pretty frothy suburban lifestyle. But I knew deep in my heart that I needed to go be still. Something wanted to work on me and change me. And so the first thing I did was ignore it and worked harder in the middle of the pandemic. And then that summer, everything started to catch on fire in California. That was the year of so many fires. And everything got more and more difficult. We were sent back to work, and we were working 7 days a week. It was absolutely intense, and life was starting to really burn, physically as well as emotionally and mentally. The more I denied that part of me that said now, the more intense everything got. At the same time, for some inexplicable reason, money started coming in from the strangest of sources. And in hindsight, I could see how my guidance, whatever helps me, whatever helps all of us, really had a plan in place. And I was fighting it at first, but it was like, if you would walk away from everything right now, we have you. So, it took about another couple of months and more fires. There were 1,600 lightning strikes in the San Francisco Bay Area, and everything was catching on fire. And I declared to my family, I said, hey, I'm getting out of here. I'm going to Bend, Oregon, and I'm going to go sit tight and I need to hit my yoga mat and meditate. And I didn't quite tell them. I knew something needed to go through a metamorphosis in me. I didn't understand it. And I was headed to Bend, Oregon, and it caught on fire. So now I had to go somewhere else. I had arranged to leave, but I didn't know where I was going to go. And to this day, Rani, I don't know how I chose Taos. I have no recollection. Something must have just done it, because I found myself booking an Airbnb, and I went to Taos for 6 weeks, and everything stopped from a life that had been completely in motion for the previous 17 years, as a way both to cope with parenting, as a way of coping with a marriage that wasn't working. I kept in motion. And there I was, a month after I had created this in October now of 2020, and there was no motion. Nothing. There was absolutely nothing. And it was somewhat terrifying at first to find yourself now sitting quietly. And for the next 5-6 weeks, I just sat. I did my meditation practices. I did my yoga practices. And I had the luxury, which not everybody gets, but I had the luxury of this downtime. And like I said, I had been receiving from the most obtuse sources. Money was coming in. I couldn't even figure, made no sense at the time. And when I left that personal retreat, I knew a lot of things needed to change. And so I went home back to California to my then partner of 31 years. And I said, I need an entire year off. And because whatever's happening, I need to let this happen and marinate. And he said, basically no. And that began the dissolution of 31 years together, which happened actually fairly smoothly. And I mean, nobody who's been through divorce can tell you that it's all easy. We had some rough times that year, but we're really good friends, and we're really good parents to our 25-year-olds. And I have a lot of love in my heart for him. And it was really clear that we were complete, and that I needed to go on this journey, which I didn't know what the journey was, and I didn't know what it was going to bring about. And I also just want to say, because I think your audience will appreciate this, I had been hearing that I needed to let something work on me for over a decade. And I like to tell the story of the penguins. There's always one baby penguin on the iceberg that doesn't want to jump in the water when mom and dad say it's time to learn to swim. And I feel like I was that penguin, that I had been hearing for a long, long time, we have something for you, but you have to let us. And I kept saying, no, I don't want to jump in the water. It's really cold. And what that was is I was really terrified of leaving my community and the security of my marriage and the identity. I'm a married person. I belong on somebody's arm. We go to dinner parties together. And so it took me a lot of years to work up the courage. And it really was that push, that wedge push that many people felt in 2020, where the compression of COVID and the stripping away of some of the narratives we had all bought into, where I finally went, yes, I'll do it. Even if it means, the end of the marriage, it meant walking out of real estate eventually within the next year. It meant moving away from my entire community. And the way that happened was, once we decided to go our own way, this is what lets me know that this was guided the whole time. Because when I decided to separate from my partner, I had thought, well, I'll continue in real estate. I'll rent or buy something very modest, very nearby. It's very expensive in the San Francisco Bay Area. And at that time, somebody in Taos who I had reconnected with, a lovely couple, reached out to me. I had met them the first week I'd gone into real estate 17 years earlier. And they said, we're going to sell our farm and we think you should buy it. And I said, no, you haven't gotten the story straight. I'm getting divorced. I'm not going to have any money. And I'm going to be, it's going to take everything I have just to keep real estate going in California. And they just smiled. They were in their 70s. They're like, no, you're going to buy our farm. And so this happened on 3 or 4 occasions over the phone. I was back in California. I was going through this whole divorce separation process, and they kept insisting, no, you're actually going to buy our farm. And on the way out earlier, when I had driven out the previous fall, I had kind of said to myself, that fantasy you wanted a farm one day, that's kind of gone. It had been my big why while I was in real estate. But I realized as I drove out there that fall, I wasn't going to get a farm in Sebastopol, California, or even Southern Oregon. It was all burning, and it needed to go through some pretty big transformations on that land over the next 50 years. And it was that fantasy had come to an end. So here it was 4 or 5 months later, and I find myself separated and kind of at loose ends. And all of a sudden, I say out of the blue, I don't even know what motivated me. We were a year before we were going to be divorced. I say, I think you should buy me out of the house. I think it's a good time to do it. The interest rates are super low. And these things can usually take a long time. Within 3 weeks, all the money for the farm was in the bank, plus surplus. And this was 10 months before the divorce was final. It was the strangest thing. It was like, who is orchestrating this? There was something going on in the background. I had finally said yes to my mission, and everything was on speed dial. It was just like happening so fast. And I think what's so interesting and inspiring about the story, and why I want to tell it, is because I think it's really terrifying to walk into your life's purpose. And it's usually because we've created, I created a marriage and a community and an identity and security and safety. But I hadn't created it from my soul necessarily. I had created it from my sense of self. And so there I was, that when I had finally said yes, everything was like grease lightning. It just happened. And so even though I kept saying to these people who would call me and say, "You're going to buy our farm," and I would be like, I'm doing all this. All of a sudden I was sitting with the resources to do it, because the cost of living in California is completely different than the cost of living in northern New Mexico. And so what was going to be a little modest condo and continuing my career became a 4-acre organic farm in northern New Mexico. And so about the gestation period of a human child, 9 to 10 months later, from the moment I had arrived in New Mexico, the first time, when I got the inspiration that I was going to have to dive deep into the self-recovery process, the moving truck pulled up at the farm and I unloaded, and I sat there going, what have I just done? It was both exhilarating and terrifying at the same time. And I'm sitting in northern New Mexico I knew one person in northern New Mexico, an old friend, and no community, no job, no nothing. And I'm like, but I feel like I'm supposed to be here. And so that was how I arrived into this space. So that's kind of the origin story of how I ended up on the farm.
Wow. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that, Anastasia. What a journey it's been, for you. But what is beautiful, what you said is at, at some point on that journey, you had so much resistance. And when we are in that resistance mode, nothing happens until we start to let go. And that's what you did. And you step into the unknown. You got out of your comfort zone to go to a place where you knew only one person, and starting all over from scratch. It's like really a huge step that you
Yeah.
took, but you allowed it to happen as well. You allowed the universe to put things in order, and the universe is so kind and loving when we allow and when we let go of our control. That we all like to control things, we all like to know where we are, what we are doing. But when we allow the universe to take over, look at how beautiful the universe has been kind to you and given you your dream that you've always wanted. Wow, how beautiful to have your farm now, and where you're helping the community around, first of
Mm-hmm.
all, and but also making an impact
Mm-hmm.
on that, in that beautiful retreat center, with all what you are doing in the farm, with creating that retreat center. And I saw the photos of your website. Oh my God, what a beautiful place with the mountains. It's a dream place. It it feels like home. It feels so peaceful. You are so privileged to be there, I would say. Yeah.
I am indeed blessed, Rani.
Oh,
Indeed
yes.
blessed.
I
Yeah.
can imagine. I can imagine. And for today, for anybody who has never heard of, who is not very familiar with regenerative farming, how would you describe it, Anastasia?
Yeah. So I think, if you don't mind, Randy, I'm going to tell you a little bit of the story of how we went from organic to regenerative, which I think will
Yes.
help kind of flesh out what is a regenerative. So when I got here, it was a 4-acre fruit farm mostly, and it was in organic production. It wasn't commercial, but there was quite a bit of food being produced. And organic meant they weren't using pesticides. But at the same time, they weren't practicing the regenerative, which means they weren't necessarily building pollinator habitat, and they weren't creating the conditions to allow for regeneration to happen for the soil. And when we go into regeneration, at first we start thinking it from a farm perspective, but it really is an all systems perspective. Humans are part of nature, and so we are part of the regeneration as well. We steward with the farm here, as well as we are regenerated by the farm. And so what we had to do here is take out some of the sod. There was like orchard grass and everything looked very pristine and pretty, but there wasn't enough vitality in the soil. And so some of the trees were sick, but we couldn't use poison to fix the sickness. We needed to create the circumstances under which the soil could start to regenerate and create. For one thing, we brought in wood chips, which has, as it breaks down, there's mycelium fibers. And as many of your audience have probably begun to hear in the last decade about how mycelium conveys not only the sugars between trees, but it'll convey information and water. And so you have to create these conditions under which the substrate is actually able not only to communicate, but to transfer all of the nutrients and the medicines that we have yet to even understand between each other. So how we did that is we took up the sod. We disturbed at first, which in permaculture, you disturb at first and rebuild. So the humans come in, just like humans in Native American cultures came in and created fire in forests and got rid of the understory and create meadows. They're part of the whole system. So we're part of this system. We come in and we started planting a 50 seed mix. So there were things like daikon radish, which they have a really deep taproot, so they come break up our clay soil. We had vetch, which put out a very sexy purple flower and bring in the pollinators. We had oat flowers. We had clovers, and we create this massive wild garden of diversity that calls in all of these different the birds, the pollinators. And unbeknownst to me, I was having a problem with mice, and this is one thing I hadn't expected, and I love this about regeneration. You just don't quite know what's coming next. The mice were exploding one year. We were regenerating the orchard, and the next year, the generation, you've got all this growth up to about your ribs. And in there were snakes. They were starting to come onto the land because it's cooler underneath there. It's moisture underneath there. The understory, all of the living microorganisms were super healthy. And the snakes started regenerating, and they went after the mice. And they took down the mouse population. And that's a living system that starts to work. And not only is that regeneration system here and alive on the farm, it starts to become something in my system. And then I bring communities together for ceremony and for classwork and for retreats. And they get to experience this regeneration and realize that we are part of the regeneration. We're not separate from nature. We are part of this nature and part of this system. And so that's the weave. And the reason I wanted to have this farm in the first place is because, Rani, as you and I have discussed, it's so apparent that humanity is going through a radical reimagining. And this sense of separation that we've all been experiencing, which has led to violence, war, poverty, economic slanting where some have a lot and some don't. It comes from that deep sense of separation. And when I left for this farm, part of the main pull for me was I can't be a part of the problem anymore. And when I was in real estate, I felt like even lovely people I was working with, I was still a part of the problem. And so by coming here, I feel like I'm a part of the solution, and I want to offer that as medicine for others to come and experience and to support people who are beginning to feel that same deep sense of metamorphosis in themselves. Like, I don't fit in my life anymore. I totally hear that. I've been through it, and I support everybody who's going through that right now. That feeling of I don't fit in my life anymore. I don't know what to do. Find a place. It could, there's so many places like mine now, eco villages and whatnot, where you can just decompress and start to let that intelligence within you begin to inform you and lead you. And that's when, as you know, the magic starts to really, really happen.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for explaining the regeneration farm, how it works. And for me as well, I love that you explain that, what it is. I know about organic farm, but regeneration is so much work behind it to really, you go to the root cause and start to revive the land. That's what you are doing, which is beautiful. Yes.
And then it revives us.
Yes, yes, that's so true. Yeah. It's
Revives us.
giving back to what belongs, giving back to life, giving back to nature its life, and then it helps us again. It's always giving to us. Mother Gaia is always kind and loving and always giving to us. And you talk about you you mentioned also that it's important to foster connection and to foster trust, among in the job that you are doing. How do you do that with the people who come to your land, Anastasia?
At any given time, there is usually a few people living here,
Okay.
and they might be living and doing their own thing, kind of having their own private retreat, or they might come here as a group and lead their own retreat. And then I have people that live on the farm and they cycle through. And so, in the working of the land, in the sharing of meals together, which doesn't happen daily, but we get together, there's Rani, I hope you come out here because there is something magical happening here. And when people come here, they feel it. And it's hard to say the how of it because it can look like somebody coming to use the farm to teach a class. It can look like I have somebody who's brought their tiny home and she's on the edge of the field and she helps trade off some of the time with landscaping. And then I have somebody else who's renting the cottage, who's a youngster, who's engaged in organic farming in Seattle. She's been here 2 different seasons now, a year apart. And so it can look like many things. It could look like a retreat coming in for the week. It could look like somebody whose work's trading me. It could look like somebody who's teaching a class every week on the farm with, in Taos, New Mexico. I don't know if that answers the question.
Yes. Yes, thank you so much for sharing that. So it's like anybody who wants to come and to give a bit of their time, of their energy, to do things on the land, it's most welcome, isn't it?
Seasonally, it depends what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, like for instance, the apartment's open right now. This is May that we're talking. I don't know when you're going to be. So, May and June and July, I may get somebody who just wants to come
Mhm.
and commune with the land and live in the apartment. And maybe they're writing a memoir, or maybe they're healing from cancer, or we get variety of people who want to come and do something maybe privately on their own
Okay.
and enjoy the land and eat out of the garden. We have a really large kitchen garden that we put in this time of year. All the way to somebody's coming to offer a retreat for a long weekend or a week to during last year we had I had a workaway person here who all her job was to process fruit.
Mhm.
There was so much of it, so she was doing canning and solar drying.
Okay. Wow. how busy it gets throughout the year. So you have people coming in and out, new people, some who came last year come back again. It's there's so much activity going on, which is wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing all that. And you talked earlier, I mentioned earlier that you are an intuitive reader and you've been doing somatic work before you got into real estate. So tell us a bit more, what is intuitive reader and how does it work, Anastasia?
Thanks, Rani. It's gone through a lot of iterations right now, or I should say I've gone through a lot of iterations. And here's where I am today. As I was mentioning to you before we started this talk, I'm gonna put a pin on water because we're gonna talk about water in a minute. But the current iteration is that people come to me who are experiencing this deep sense of their life is falling off, like it's falling out of them or off of them, and they're kind of left with what I like to call there's no place to be, there's no one to become, and there's nothing to do. And that can cause a lot of anxiety. And it's really great to have somebody be able to hold the container who can see past that to your soul and know this is absolutely perfect. You're on path. And so I can hold space for people, and combined with the field of them, we can tap into their higher self and start to download the mission statement that is coming through for them. I absolutely trust that everybody's got their mission statement and has got a direct connect to higher self. Sometimes our personalities want to take over and get in the way a little bit with the stories that we tell ourselves. So if we can just come into the field of somebody else, and the story can start to fall softly to our feet, and we can be left in a field, in a container energetically, where we can start to download together. What is it you're here to do? What is it you need to heal? And sometimes I'll even use internal family systems, IFS. If something comes up, there's like a voice, a part of you that's got a wound or an issue that it's not able to move off of. So we can help it start to get some self energy again from your soul and get you closer and back on track to your mission. So I'm holding the container and space for that.
Oh, wow, that's great that you are also using other modalities like IFS to help the people to release whatever is holding them back. Yes. Yeah, that's a great kind of session that people need at this time. And if anybody wants to get some help or you are stuck, you don't know where you are going, so feel free to reach out to Anastasia. She would be very happy to provide you with some sessions. And my other last question to you, Anastasia, before the last question, the second last question is, what would you say to people today who are listening and watching and who are facing some tough times? What steps or advice could you offer them to navigate and eventually overcome adversity?
That's a really good question. The first thing when there's we have so much that we're working through. Humanity is been so traumatized by this separation that's been going on for thousands of years. We didn't start off separated from source in our awareness, and something happened that caused this break in our psyche. And through that break, as you know, there's been violence committed against entire people, individuals. There's been so much economic disparity where we never should have been broken from our own, Mother Gaia is here to care for us. I would say my number one piece of advice is always going to be for me to find a way to get your feet on the earth. if it's a park in your city, and or it's, land near you, or a beach near you, or forest. And in that place, just to put your hand on your head, on your chest, and a hand on your belly, and just to ask source, whatever source is for you. You may have absolutely no faith left in you, but from a faithless place, just ask the source intelligence that built your magnificence. What is it you need? Just say, I need help with, I have no more ability to heal this, or to fix something, or to help this person in my life. Help me. And just rest and breathe and feel your feet on the ground somewhere, or on the beach, or in the ocean, and just keep coming back to that place. And even though you may not believe it, I know it's listening, and it will come up with the most unusual, from out of left field, perhaps, a solution, an answer, the next step. And all we need is the next moment. We don't need the full download of, and it wouldn't be helpful to see how we're going to heal the whole thing. But just to start there, that's where I would go.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. That's such a beautiful practice to connect back to the land. And I love doing that myself. It's really helped you to connect back to your source, which is Earth. And it helps you to build that connection to yourself again when you connect to Mother Earth. Thank you. Yes, I think it's such a beautiful practice. Thank you so much, Anastasia. And my last question to you, Anastasia, how can people stay updated or get in touch with you? And tell us more also about the work that you do.
If you go to the harmonytaosfarm.com website, there's a newsletter page, as well as there's a contact page. And you can put your information in there, and it'll go straight to harmonytaosfarm@gmail.com. Or you can just email me at harmonytaosfarm@gmail.com.
All right, that's great. And your links will appear below on the video, and people can reach out and connect with you, Anastasia. And any final words that you would like to share with the audience before we end the podcast?
Rani, if you don't mind, I would love to share this recent story about water.
Yes.
You good for that? Okay. So one of the things that when I first got to the farm, and my permaculturist asked me, what do you want to do here? Because I brought a permaculturist on board. And without thinking, I blurted out, I want to make it rain. Because we live in 7,000 feet, high desert with about 14 inches of rain a year. And water is always the number one issue in northern New Mexico. And we both laughed, and that was 2021. And I want to fast forward. So this has been on my mind, how can I talk to water? What does water have to say to me? How do I communicate? And in using my intellect and using way too much knowledge to try to answer this question, but it's been there for all these years. And this spring, last month, I got a hold of a podcast in which a woman in the Northwest was interviewed. And one of the last is she talks to water. And one of the last things she showed us was that she had asked this question, who am I? And while holding a dish of water, and then she froze it. And the next morning it had her name. And so I'm like, okay, if water's intelligent, I'm going to try this. So I took some spring water, and I held the dish while standing in my kitchen staring at Pueblo Mountain, which I always stare at Pueblo Mountain unconsciously. And I said, who am I? And I put it in the freezer and came back the next morning, and it had a perfect outline of Pueblo Mountain. And so now the hair is standing up in the back of my neck, and this overly intellectualized human being is going, wait, what? And in that moment, I forgot to remember that water isn't intelligent. And I want to say it that way on purpose, because we hold beliefs so firmly, and we don't even know we're grasping those beliefs. And when we stop having to hold them, the intelligence that is always around us comes through. And so I forgot to remember that water wasn't intelligent. And in that moment, it downloaded like amazing amounts of information into me. And it said, with a lot of laughter, "You think you're programming me? What makes you think I'm not programming you?" With laughter. And I'm like, who is this? What is this? And I realized that the reason it had looked out at the world and seen Pueblo Mountain and put it into the water, it was looking through my eyes. I'm 98% water. You're 98% water. We are water, and water is intelligent. And so it was working through me. And so in that moment, in my forgetfulness, when I was stunned and shocked, I realized that Gaia was the intelligence of water. Our planet is mostly water. She came first, and she built us in divine marriage with our soul's blueprint. And that is what we are. And so I've been on this journey now for the last month where sometimes I can't remember what I am. It's like a flicker, 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 flicker. Gaia's got her way with me. I'm doing her bidding. Flicker. I'm just me, Anastasia, with my identity. Flicker. And I really am starting to understand that every single person on this planet is going through this radical change where we are dropping our sense of separation. And it's happening in small ways or in large ways, but it's happening, and it's going to happen more and more in the next few years. And that's the message that I wanted to leave with your listeners.
Thank you. Wow. What a great message. Thank you so much for sharing that and for reminding us of the importance of water, and that water is a frequency. Water is energy.
And it's the love that
energy.
we are. We are that magnificent.
Yes.
We're absolutely that magnificent, and we just cannot quite get out of our way sometimes to see how much beauty we are right now in all our glory and messiness. We are that magnificent. Just nothing to change. Still have our personality, still have our history, still have the things that drive ourselves crazy, and yet we are that beautiful.
And that also reminds us of our connection, how connected we are to everything,
Absolutely everything.
Water, everything, we are connected, everything. And we are the universe because everything is within us, everything. Yeah.
Yeah, that template that your soul brought forward in the sacred marriage with Pachamama, with Gaia,
yes.
Yeah, is right here living. And each of the people listening, they are that beautiful, that perfect, and that magnificent, while also being everything else we see in ourselves.
Yeah. Oh my God, it's been such a pleasure talking to you, Anastasia. We can talk for hours. I'm very grateful for your time and mindful that we have to go now. And thank you so much for opening up, for sharing your story and everything that you do to the audience. I would like to wish you a lot of success with your farm, and I really look forward to visiting your farm someday and bringing other people there to come and experience that beautiful place, that magical place. And I would like to say huge thank you to the audience for watching, listening, subscribing, and sharing. And remember, everybody, you are amazing. You have always been amazing, and you always will be amazing. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Rani.